can you share your journey from being a VC scout and intern to starting your own firm, Slidedeckk?
Yeah, so in the past working with so many startups, you see that the process of funding and learning how to fund and learning how to do your pitch deck is very not easy, I would say. It does come easy to others and less easier to some, but working for startups and watching them fundraise and seeing them need the money and watching them go through what they have to find funding and just always trying to meet VCs and always trying to meet the right people. Um, I knew that my best skill was pitch decks, right? And so that was something that I started kind of just helping people just for free. Like I just be like, oh, can I help you with your pitch deck? And over time, people would just be like, man, you're really good at this. You should do something with it.
That's really good to know. And as you said, it doesn't come as easy to every founder as others. So what common challenges do you see startup founders face when, it comes to writing compelling pitch decks, and how do you address these challenges?
Yeah, so a few of the most common things I would say is, things like putting too many words in your pitch deck. Investors spend on average maybe max 3 minutes, I would say, on a pitch deck. And so you need to be very clear and concise on what your pitch deck says and what your pitch deck is meaning to portray, right? So I'd say that's like one of the biggest things. Second thing I would add is, making sure that there's clarity on what your product is or what you're selling or what you're maybe if it's an agency, what are you really doing? um just making sure you have that clarity, and that ties into the last thing, which is just not putting too much of what you know about that subject on your pitch deck. So, what happens a lot of the time with founders is founders get super excited because this is their baby, this is their project. And because of that, they tend to want to put so much on their pitch deck. And so I kind of have to go in and help them to dissect which is what is needed on their pitch deck and what the types of investors they're reaching out to are looking for.
I see. 3 minutes, that's pretty hard. So, what do you
Yes.
think are elements that startup founders should put in their pitch deck to actually captivate the attention in these 3 minutes of a potential VC?
Yeah, of course. So, a few of the things I would say is, making sure that you have the guts of your pitch deck, right? The solution, the problem, market. And, one of the things that I like to say as well is when you do that market slide, make sure that you are putting real facts in there. Make sure that you are putting, what is relating specifically to your product. I see a lot of founders put in things that are kind of a little bit more general, rather than in specific relation to their product or agency or whatever they're selling or putting down. And so that would be one of my biggest things. But just making sure that the guts of your pitch deck are in there, making sure that you don't have too many words, making sure that you don't have too many things going on. We ask for visuals, but that doesn't mean putting like 6 pictures on every slide, right? And so just making sure that again, you have that clarity on what exactly you're selling or what exactly your product is. So investors know immediately when they look at it, oh, this is her product, this is her problem, and this is her solution. And just again, making sure also that your solution and your problem are very clear and concise.
Karen, of course, you also had experience in the VC industry itself. How important do you think actually a pitch deck is to acquiring funds as a startup founder?
Yeah, so I'd say there's two sides to it, right? So if you're somebody that has the right connections, you're able to kind of get the right people in the room with you, your pitch deck is less important, right? Because in those settings, you need to be able to pitch by mouth, right? And so making sure that you have that is super important. And then there's the other side, right? Which is when your pitch deck is super important, which is more so when you're in a room where you don't know people and you're having to cold call and cold email. And so in those moments, which is a big majority of founders, in those moments, your pitch deck is extremely important because it's a one and done, right? If that pitch deck doesn't appeal to the investor, then immediately it's not something that, they're going to want to turn around and look back at it again.
That makes sense. So, in terms of the timeline, how should startup founders approach the creation of a pitch deck? Is it something they should do in early stages or when they're actually close to seeking investment?
Yeah, so I think there's also two sides to this question as well. I would say, depending on how well you know your product and how much you absolutely need funding, right? Because there's founders where they don't super need funding in that moment, but they need funding eventually. Um, you know, in those times, I'd say it's okay to, when you're closer to being a bit more in need of that, and kind of focus on the business and focusing on your startup instead of, the pitch deck, or maybe just outsourcing somebody to have a pitch deck on hand, outsourcing somebody to make a pitch deck for you so that it's there on hand. And when you're closer to wanting to present to investors, you have something on hand that you can kind of just go through and edit really quickly. Or, if you have an advisor or a mentor, um, just going through that and editing it better to your liking. And then I would say, if it's something that you need software, you need engineers, you need, software developers, I would say do your pitch deck as early as possible, as early as um, what the exact business model of your startup is.
I see. I see. One thing that we have often seen startup founders struggle with, especially with in pitch deck writing, is the competitive slide. So, what
Mm,
advice would you have for those founders? How can they create that slide to stand out from the competition?
yeah, so competition slide, I would say do your research. I think something that a lot of founders, at least that I've seen, is that we tend to just put people that are competitors that seem like competitors, but they're not direct competitors. So, for example, making sure that the people that are competitors are people that are catering to your industry and it's not something that's so general. And when you do have that, you can kind of better put, okay, well, they offered this, we offered this, this, and this, right? And so, um, just having in your head, even before you put that slide down, having in your head what your differentiating factor is. Because when you do pitch to a VC, it's likely that they might have seen something similar before.
I see. I see. That's the thing, right? You are going in with your baby with armed
Yeah,
knowledge deep about the subject, but the
yeah,
VC is just spending 3 minutes and they've seen more or less similar products,
exactly.
a lot of
Yes,
times.
yes.
So you need to really stand out and shine, and that's where agencies or help could really be,
Yeah,
come in handy.
exactly.
However, of course, one thing that startup founders are often short of is money and resources, and they're always concerned about the cost of such professional pitch deck services. So, can startups with like limited budgets still benefit from slide decks expertise?
Yes, I would say so. And the way that we offer what we do is we have different levels at which we can help you, right? And so the way that we do it, which by the way, I am a solopreneur, so I'm kind of doing this on my own. And so the way that I do it is I have different stages which I can help. And so, we have sessions, and these sessions can last up to 3 hours. And so I charge just a flat rate for each session. And so, you can have only 2 sessions per month and see how you like it from there. And it goes from 2 to 4 to 6 sessions per month.
I
Um,
see.
so yeah, it depends on, how much help you need. And so if you don't have that budget, I would say starting with maybe 2 sessions a month, it would really help you kind of get you going there.
First of all, like hats off as a solo entrepreneur, doing it all on your
Yeah.
own. It's like, being your own army. It's so hard. And wow, proud of you for sharing
Thank
that.
you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's definitely a journey.
It is indeed. I can understand. We are a huge team, but we still struggle every day. So I'm,
Yeah.
I'm sure that must be hard. So we would love to hear some success stories or case studies where your services have helped a startup's ability to secure funding or achieve success.
Yeah, definitely. So recently actually, or actually let me talk about in the beginning, when I first started Slidedeckk, so it was near around 2020, 2021. And in 2020, a lot of people were more so focused on e-commerce because everybody was home, everybody was Mac. And when I was in high school, that was when I kind of got into e-commerce. So I knew how e-commerce worked, I knew how Shopify works. And so in the very beginning, one of my favorite clients, her name was also Karen. I was able to kind of help her to better understand her business model because, when you are looking at the pitch deck, you do have to have in your head exactly what your model is. That way it's what's, shown on the pitch deck, right? So that you can see that, okay, this founder has a great understanding of what they're offering. So I would say that was probably one of my favorites is was working with people that were in e-commerce that were kind of more so looking at how to um, better portray their business model. Because for a lot of people that were doing e-commerce, they were new to business completely. And so being able to help in that sense of better understanding their business model in order to, pitch, in order to um, create that pitch deck.
I'm sure, and especially during the pandemic era, there was so much uncertainty that they definitely needed that help. There was uncertainty around the scale, around growth, around resources.
Mhm.
So I'm sure your help must have come in really handy and helped those e-commerce. I'm hopeful they became like giants or are doing well in their businesses.
Yes, yes,
All right.
definitely.
So, going back a little in your time as a VC scout and intern, what are some key factors that made a startup's pitch deck appealing to you and your colleagues? Like, are there any specific trends or preferences you noticed within the VC world?
Yeah, so I think one of the main things that I always notice just looking at pitch decks even in general is or not even just pitch decks, but when people would pitch to me, I think one of the biggest things that was very appealing to me was the team, right? Who's on your team? Who are your founding team members? You know, understanding how well you guys are able to communicate with each other and understanding how well you guys are able to cater to each other was super big for me because over time, I think you notice that depending on how well structured the team is, you'll know how well their startup will do in the future. And so understanding the team dynamic and whoever the founder is, just even just having a great flowing conversation with that person will really help. And it's not always like, you get on the call and automatic pitching, sometimes it's just, starting off with just a really good conversation and kind of gauging from the founder, you know, how well do they even know about their industry or how well do they know their product without looking at the pitch deck and just seeing people that are more so passionate about their startup rather than seeking a profit from it, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Actually, going back even further, what got you interested in pitch deck writing?
Yeah, so my the first startup that I worked for was a startup winery. And when I think one of the first things that they did was they were like, okay, write our pitch deck for us and or help write our pitch deck for us. And I just remember being so like confused and not knowing what to do and just being like, man, like, what even is a pitch deck and how am I gonna write this? And I was just like so in my nerves and just like nervous to even talk to them. And so I think going from there and over time, working on that and working on, looking at the research that I went through, trying to help them kind of gauged and sparked my interest in being like, okay, well, oh, like for example, the Airbnb, that one pitch deck that we all look at for Airbnb and, so I think my research, I would say at that time was kind of what catapulted me into wanting to better understand what a pitch deck is. And um, once I was able to grasp that, helping startup stage and kind of just being in the background with them and watching them review pitch decks and seeing that not every founder understands the dynamic of a good pitch deck and kind of just needs that push. And so that's what kind of gauged me into getting interested in pitch decks.
That makes a lot of sense and great journey so far. You
Thank
also have experience in new business development, process improvement. So, do
Yeah.
you offer strategic guidance to founders beyond pitch deck writing as well? Like anything
Yes.
additional that you offer?
Yeah, definitely. So, one of the things that kind of just comes with Slidedeckk, especially in our sessions, is with that new business development, a lot of founders are first time founders, right? And so, like I was saying, having your business model in mind um, before you really create that pitch deck or even during your time creating the pitch deck. Um, Something that I see a lot with founders is them not knowing what exactly their business model is, or, us having a session and them realizing that they don't know exactly what their business model is, which is totally fine. And it's better to have that understanding while you're creating your pitch deck. That way, you're not messing up when you're in conversation with a VC or an angel. And so what comes with that is kind of just sitting down and dissecting, okay, what is the problem that the people you want to cater to are facing, right? Even just like dissecting that, or dissecting, what is the real solution that I'm solving here? Not even just my product, but what exactly are these people looking for to solve that problem that they're continuously having. And so kind of having basis of the knowledge that is your pitch deck, but kind of creating what you need to have in your mind already. So I don't even know how I would put that. Kind of just having a general analysis and understanding of what your pitch deck should be, what your product is. That's what I would say we help a lot with when it comes to speaking with founders. Yeah.
Makes sense. All right, that's great to know. Um, Pitch decks also differ a lot per industry. So you're writing something for technology versus healthcare versus impact
Yes.
focused ventures. So can you share some tips or best practices for founders who are trying to optimize their pitch deck for specific industries?
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that I always say is that it's super, super important, right, to have a super deep understanding of your industry, even if it's not deep understanding who's investing in that industry, who's investing in not specifically you, but the general platform in which you're catering to. So I would say it's super important to understand your investors. Who are you pitching to? Who do you want on your table, right? Um, Things like that, I would say, yeah.
That makes sense. So you have probably read more pitch decks than most of us in our life.
Yeah.
What do you see as the future of pitch decks in startups and venture capital landscape? Like, are there any trends that you founders should be aware of?
Yeah, man, I think the future of pitch decks, I would say, which I know we all know is coming, is just AI, right? Um, I think something that's now developing is people using AI to write their pitch decks, which in general, that sounds really cool, right? Um, Something that I think will help is having a personal touch though to your pitch deck, right? Because, let's say you are working or having an informational meeting with an angel, right? An angel's going to be just a little bit more personally invested than somebody that's a venture capitalist that's, looking to add something to their table. So having that personal touch, I would say, is super important still, even in the rise of AI. Um, Especially with angels or even that friends and family round that you're doing, making sure that your pitch deck is not completely AI written.
Makes sense. Finally, to wrap up, like any advice that you would have for startup founders, our listeners, that you'd like to share about pitch deck writing or generally about the venture capital landscape?
Yeah, definitely. So one thing that I think I would share is, um, first of all, reach out to us. If you need anything in pitch deck writing or advice or tips, and I'm always open to coffee chats. And I think my biggest thing would just be relax and write down first what your actual business model is. What are you actually wanting to cater? Who actually is your audience? What investors are you looking for specifically, right? If you're doing something in food, is it, what type of food is it? Maybe somebody invests in, something that's a perishable food item, whereas another investor invests in drinks, right? So investors range and they vary. So just making sure that you have clarity before anything, before anybody else does. Yeah.
That makes sense.